Once upon a time, two friends joined forces to bring you the best in horror entertainment. Brian from the north, Tim from the south, each bringing their own unique perspective to the horror community. Movie reviews, Blu-ray releases, beer pairings, games, and more. Welcome to your new home for horror. This is Civil Gore.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome to the Civil Gore Podcast. This is episode 266. I messed up the intro again, but I'm going to let Brian take it the rest of the way.
Did you mess it up? It is 266.
It is 260, but I've messed up the order. There's a whole flow to it that I didn't do right.
I don't think anyone noticed. We'll be okay.
No.
But yes, and this is Brian. We are doing our week 3 of Summer Slaycation, which is technically our second series of movies. And David McHugh did it again, by the way. He guessed it. He didn't get it right on the first try, like he did. Didn't get Lost Boys on what I thought was a very obscure clue that he got right away. But this one, at least he guessed wrong the first time, but it was an obvious guess wrong. I even told Tim, I said, I guarantee you people are going to guess this. And it was because I did a clue, for those who have been following, I did a clue where it said, it showed was it Carl Weathers talking about from Mandalorian,
I think it was,
saying bounty hunters are my favorite people. Now, of course, people saw, I think 80s, they see Carl Weathers, they know we're not doing Rocky for the Summer Slaycation, so they immediately went to Predator, which is a great guess, of course, but the one we are doing is Critters, which of course featured the bounty hunters are a big fun part of the first two series.
It's so funny because I have not seen this movie since the VHS days.
Oh, same here. I have not seen them in years.
Like, I did not remember any of the bounty hunter stuff. Like, zero. Like, all I remembered was Critters and Critters attacking. And, I thought I had never seen Critters 2, but I did remember the big critter ball.
Oh, yeah, that's so iconic, I think, too. So
I must have seen it at some point, but I didn't remember enough about it. Like, it was watching a brand new movie to me. I didn't remember anything about it other than the critter ball. So it's just kind of funny that, these movies are so like ingrained. Like, have you seen Critters? Oh, of course I've seen Critters. Yeah. But I literally haven't seen it since probably the 80s.
Yeah, and it was
or the early 90s.
Yeah, I think the first two were pretty well circulated on cable back in the day. The other ones, though, I don't know, from 3 on, I don't think were really that prevalent. I think, they were, I think there was a decent skip, right? Between, I think 91 was like a 3-year skip, I think, in there. And by the early 90s, cable was all different. It wasn't the same classic things where it was like new stuff would be constantly being added to keep it fresh. It wasn't the same, like, you'd see the same movie a million times, And then, but again, it was just also before they started really expanding and making like 6 different HBOs, 10 Cinemax, all that either. Then it kind of got back to where you would get that again. But yeah, I remember the first 2 were very heavily played, if I remember correctly. I think I want to say Cinemax or Showtime. That wasn't HBO. I think it was Cinemax or Showtime that used to play the first one a lot. And then actually, when I got to California, they had that Encore station, Stars and Encore, remember, came up. And my Encore used to play it a lot. I remember, of course, because they were big on 80s movies. So they used to play 1 and 2 a bunch. But I haven't seen, I'm set, like, I can't remember the time I saw it, but it's probably somewhere in the 90s when I saw these last 1 and 2. So this was, again, it was a treat. That's what I love about the Slaycations, though, is when you go back to a series that you may, like, haven't seen in a while. And, that's why this one especially, of course, is near to our heart. That the theme of it being 80s is great because, Tim and I are kids of the 80s. We love all that 80s nostalgia. And so, like, this just is a bonus to us that we get to go revisit these cool 80s started series.
Yeah, I like the fact that you don't typically get to watch these as close together as we do.
Yeah.
Because, you normally growing up, you would have watched these as they came out. So you would have had years between them.
Right.
And most people aren't going to do like a Critters marathon. Like normally, I mean, maybe some of you do out there, but for me personally, I don't typically just pick a franchise and just go through all of them in order. Like, I will revisit Friday the 13th, Halloween, but usually I'll jump around and stuff. So it's rare that I get to just sit down and watch all of them back to back. And you get to see little things that you never would have noticed otherwise when you watch these at such close proximity, and you get to see what storylines and what characters go through the entire story arc and that kind of thing. It's really interesting, like, to see the evolution of a movie from like big blockbuster hit to like terrible sequels to like what the hell were they thinking?
Yeah.
I mean, it's so neat to see the whole arc of how these franchises go.
Yeah, and you don't have the anticipation of having to wait 3 years to be disappointed. You know, you get
exactly.
Get it right. and just for the reference, if I happen to have the box set, but right now the first 4 are all on Tubi for at least another week, I think. I do know they're ending soon. It's not going to be on in perpetuity. I think it was one of those ones where it's like, oh, you have 14 days left to see something like that, and that was 2 weeks ago. So this is probably its last week if you want to catch up with us. Critters Attacks, though, I don't believe that was the 5th one. I don't believe that's on there. I remember, but I bought that separately. It wasn't in the box set. But yeah, I said we get right into this one because the first one is of course, the first one is always the special movie in these 80s franchises because it was at the time, I think everything kind of in the 80s kind of had this mindset of like, okay, we're going to be the next this in horror, like Friday the 13th wanted to be the next Halloween. And then there was a million of those things that wanted to be the next Friday the 13th or Halloween. So Critters, I'm not sure what, so this came out, was it right after Gremlins? Or was it?
Yeah, so there's a popular misconception, and I fell for it too, that Critters was a Gremlins knockoff because Gremlins came out in 1984. This came out in 86. But if you read through the trivia, this script was actually written well before Gremlins was ever written. So this was actually in production, did not come out until after Gremlins. Now, the studios used Gremlins to promote this, which is where that misconception comes from. The success of Gremlins was so big, they just basically piggybacked on it for the marketing for this one. But in terms of the actual writing and the story, it was not related to Gremlins. And in fact, the writers actually went back and tried to reduce the similarities between this and Gremlins because they were afraid it would be seen as a knockoff. So they actually went back and rewrote parts of it to make it less like Gremlins because their original script actually was closer to Gremlins than they realized. So,
I mean, it's natural. You're going to have little tiny creatures. Of course, there was the sci-fi element that Gremlins didn't really have.
Right.
This was definitely, more heavily themed from, because you could add the aliens in the space. So, I mean, other than the creature, tiny little creatures causing havoc and being silly and funny while terrorizing a town, yes, you're going to see the thing. And then there's, what was the other one? Munchies, Ghoulies,
there's Ghoulies.
There's all
they
these,
had a bunch of them.
These, similar ones. But I will say, now, we've mentioned this, how Gremlins are near dear to their heart, but I think that this definitely stands on its own as being just like, even without Gremlins, this I think would have been an amazing. I don't think you needed Gremlins to launch this.
Right, it's a great movie in and of itself. It's very reminiscent of other monster horror comedies like Tremors, and other things that came afterwards. So I think it really holds up. I got a lot of Leprechaun vibes from it.
That was definitely Leprechaun-y vibe. And of course, this first one had one of the ultimate pieces to make a good 80s movie, and that was Dee Wallace, which is actually a good segue. We should go into get our little housekeeping out of the way so we can get right into the discussion of this.
Yeah, so Critters came out in 1986. It was directed by Stephen Herrick. It starred the great Dee Wallace as Helen Brown, M. Emmett Walsh as Harv, Billy Green Bush as Jay Brown, the great Scott Grimes as Brad Brown, who I instantly recognized from his work on The Orville. If you've watched the TV show The Orville, he's like one of my favorite characters on The Orville, and I was like, that can't be Scott Grimes, and sure enough, it was.
He's been around a while, Scott Grimes.
He's been around a while, but he didn't actually do a lot of acting between childhood and adulthood. At least from what I remember reading on his IMDb, he wasn't known for a lot of stuff, and he came back with The Orville, and I think he's fantastic.
Yeah, he had little spots, little roles of all over the place. Like I remember him; he was in Mystery Alaska. He was big on Party of Five. It was where I remember him from specifically before this. Yeah, I mean, even though this was after it, but that's what where my Scott Grimes radar really kicked in was from Party of Five. He played Bailey's friend.
Yeah, so not a huge body of work, but he's really good. He's really good in everything he does. Nadine Vandervelde as April Brown, Don Keith Opper as Charlie McFadden, Billy Zane as Steve Elliott, Ethan Phillips as Jeff Barnes, Terrence Mann as Johnny Steele / Ugg the Bounty Hunter, Jeremy Lawrence as Preacher, and the great Lynn Shay as Sally.
Yeah. Well, because that's New Line Cinema.
Yeah.
Of course you got Lynn Shay in it.
Yeah, Lynn's the younger sister of the, was it Robert Shay that founded
Bob,
New Line?
Yeah, Robert Bob Shay.
Yeah. So great cast for this right off the bat. I think that really helps the movie that you have such a fantastic cast to start off with. And Dee Wallace, I mean, she was born to play a mom. I don't want to mean that in a derogatory way. She was born to play a mom. She's just so
and she's a younger mom in this. And she's like, I mean, she's very, still like, she's got that attractiveness to her, but like this sweetness and motherly care to you. And if you ever meet her in person, she embodies that in real life.
Yeah, she's motherly in real life.
She is one of the sweetest, one of my favorite people I've ever met at one of the we've said this before, but just for those who may be new listeners, Tim and I both met Dee Wallace on separate occasions, and both times we both had the same almost exact reaction and things we said to her, and it's stuff she's heard a million times, but yet she replies as if it's the first time she ever heard that, like, "Oh, you were like a mother to us growing up," and all this in the 80s.
Oh, she probably hears that a billion times at convention.
But but just I could just tell the way she gave it to us was such a genuine reaction of grace and gratitude and just she poses in the pictures with a giant smile on her face every time. Just one of the best guests you could meet at a con. I mean, if she's at one of your cons and you've always wanted to meet her, don't even hesitate for a second.
No, it's a delight. Billy Zane is another one I've heard. My brother actually met Billy Zane at a convention in Raleigh.
Yeah.
And he said that they were just sitting there, not even really. They were like, this was like kind of as things were winding down, and they were just sitting there, and Billy Zane struck up a conversation. He was asked because Kevin was there with like a toy club, like a Ninja Turtles club, and he started asking him about the club and really like having this long conversation, and ended up giving them free autograph pictures and everything. So he like super nice guy.
That hurt, and he played so funny because so many times he plays like these like obnoxious people in it.
Yeah,
but that shows how good he is. Because from what I've heard, everyone that's ever like contacted him, including Kevin's story, that like he's so nice.
Yeah, he's apparently just a super nice guy. I'd love to meet him sometime.
Yeah, he's got to be on the Civil War radar for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So, give you like an overview if any of you have not seen Critters. So, it starts out, like, I was completely shocked when this thing started out because I didn't remember any of this, but it starts out, these two bounty hunters are escorting these krites. They're called krites in that's their official alien term. They're transporting these things, and the krites manage to escape and make it to Earth. So these two bounty hunters who are shapeshifters, basically they start off as like a blob of Play-Doh looking face. And in fact, I was reading the trivia there, they don't even know the actors that played the like shapeless ones. They're not even credited. But they have to come down and hunt these krites that landed on Earth. And I kind of like that because it kind of makes Earth kind of a middleman. Like the critters aren't maliciously trying to attack Earth. They just happen to be there, and they're going to devour anything because they're basically galactic pests.
Yeah, and you get the vibe that they're a pain no matter where they go. Like, exactly. And that's why this group. I don't know if they even give the race of this group, but whatever race of aliens that they are, they seem to be almost like the caretakers, and they know, like, oh God, we cannot let these things terrorize another planet no matter where it is. It's like,
because they probably eat everything on the planet, and probably just like devour entire species out to extinction. So the bounty hunters have to come down, and I love that the bounty hunters aren't malicious towards the Earthlings either. Like they know these things, like you said, they're like exterminators. They know these things are not wanted on Earth, and they're going to do everything in their power to like get rid of them. And the neat thing about the shapeshifters is, and this is kind of a weird like side thing. Like it didn't really make any difference in the story per se, but one of the shapeshifters takes the persona of a rock star on Earth named Johnny Steele, so he just like morphs into him for the rest of the movie, and that's kind of his persona.
Yeah, and you know what? That seems to be such an 80s like plot point where like someone comes down and like they look on TV and they get some kind of total 80s like something,
Yeah.
and that's who they're going to represent. Because it's done like past the 80s movies. It just always shows like, okay, it's almost like a joke about like our planet as a whole. It's like, okay, look, they're watching a rock band, so that must be the most important thing to them, So it's like it shows how like TV and movies are like how we're like really the world is obsessed with media and stuff like that.
Well, in the 80s, it really was like to a point where it never had been before, because you had MTV.
Right.
Like MTV made musicians, like, I mean, I know they were icons before, but not like they were after MTV.
But now you saw them perform, now you saw them sing that song that you've heard a million times, and you almost like would know the video more than you would the song at that point for a period of time.
Because back then, in the 70s, you knew it from going to the concerts, going to the shows. That's how you knew artists outside of just listening to a record.
Album cover. That's it. And
that's it.
You rarely see, or they perform like a song on like a talk show, So the MTV, like, really, I mean, if you like, we were around when MTV debuted, and it was nothing like it is today. I mean, it literally was just music videos, and they'd have VJs come on, so it was almost like a video version of the and yes, you saw it just like you would hear the same song once an hour. Sometimes, yes, you'd see the same video once an hour, but there was something magical about it. You didn't care, It's like, because it was so new and fresh.
I just remember music being so big in the 80s. I mean, not that music's ever not been big, and it's even big today. But back then, like, it was the entire world. Like, everybody knew Michael Jackson. Everybody knew Madonna. Everybody knew Cyndi Lauper. Like, it was like completely, I feel like I was completely immersed in music all the time. Where maybe I'm not so much today unless I go seek it out. Like, I don't know. It was different, I guess, back then. It felt like it was more in your face all the time.
Well, do you remember when they used to do the premieres of the certain videos, like on Sunday at 9 o'clock or something? They'd have like like a Michael Jackson type level performer would have his video debut at a certain time. You'd actually tune in to MTV at certain times. That even before it was like they started having really scheduled programming, they would still have like video events, like, okay, this person's music video is debuting tonight at 8 o'clock.
I was telling the kids that because our neighbor had MTV and we did not. And so we knew the Thriller video was coming out, and the neighbors literally invited us over to come watch the Thriller video. I mean,
oh, wow.
That's how old I am. And I was trying to tell the kids, I was like, can you imagine, like, if, Taylor Swift was coming out with a new video? Anna's she's used to like going on YouTube and they'll have midnight premieres. It's kind of the same thing. They'll have like midnight premieres on YouTube. They'll drop their new video. I said, can you imagine if Taylor Swift had a new video and you had to go over to the neighbor's house to watch it on TV at a certain time? That's what it's like. But it was fun. It was like everything was an event. It seemed like everything was an event.
Yeah, and you could like you'd go over someone's house and like at nighttime, like on a Friday night, and just like flip on MTV and just have it on playing in the background, like of whatever you were doing. It was a very unique. It was like probably the first channel really that I would think you would do that for. Because
you just run, yeah.
It's not like you put movies on and just really not pay, or like the news. It's like they didn't have. I don't even think CNN was around back when MTV came out. It was like, I remember there was like the first like 24-hour news that I remember was like that Headline News channel when I was a kid. It was like Channel 8 or something that had 24-hour news, and it really wasn't 24-hour news. It was just like. It was like a couple of blocks of news that they just keep repeating, so I don't really count that as 24-hour news because it was never original stuff after a certain point.
They have my Samsung TV has like a few music stations that are kind of like how MTV used to be. Like they'll actually play music videos, and they have like an 80s, a 90s, a 2000s, a country, Latin. I mean, they have like different ones, but the only problem with them is like they are so ad filled. Like they might play like 2 music videos and it'll be like literally like 5 or 10 minutes worth of ads. And what's weird is the ads are for the music station. So I don't understand what the point of it is. Like, why would you interrupt 2 music videos to spend 5 minutes talking about what you're already watching?
I know. It's like, hey, if you'd like to watch 80s music videos, just keep it on this station.
It is. It's the weirdest thing. And I love turning it on because I love seeing those old videos, but it's just weird because I'm like, why do you have these big gaps where you just play commercials for the station I'm already watching.
Yeah, it literally seems like you could just automate the whole thing and never have to have anyone touch it, you know? Like,
they probably do.
Like, yeah, right, I agree though. Why with the commercials? I hate when you see a commercial for something you're already watching. That's like just infuriating to me.
It's just so irritating. Yeah,
that is like the one thing I'm like, okay, you gotta tell me someone couldn't figure out that this was gonna air right when you're watching this or something. Or I hate when they say like, hey, guess what else? If you don't have like you want to watch like ABC and you're already watching ABC, well, it's like, wouldn't it be better if you just paid a lot of money to get it on NBC so you could get them to switch over? You're already watching it. You already got me. Stop. You know? But,
well, back to the movie.
Yeah, back to as usual. Slaycations tend to have the biggest tangents of all. But
of course they have. But yeah, so the movie itself, again, as you might expect, is just from then on out, it's a matter of the family discovering that there's critters around, and Scott Grimes becomes kind of the boy,
the Billy Peltzer of this movie.
He's like exactly. That's what I was looking for. The Billy Peltzer. He's the one that knows that these things are out there, but maybe not everybody believes him, and he has to convince them. And
and he already had that signature '80s like always getting in trouble kid, so no one's gonna believe him already.
Which is funny because he looks so clean cut though. Like I don't buy for a second that he's like the always get in trouble kid. He looks so like straight A student. And then funny, it's like funny. Even in Critters 2, he's sporting the earring, and I'm like, I swear this kid does not look like.
Yeah, they are trying to force the bad boy on you with Scott Grimes. And,
but the body count in this movie is not very high. Like you don't see, and this is where we're going to draw a distinction between this movie and Critters 2. You don't really see a lot of the critters. Obviously they're in here, but it's when you see Critters 2, it's like a whole, like they ramped up everything. This movie, when you look back on it, there's not really a whole lot of it. I would say there's probably way more like gremlins and gremlins than there are critters and critters.
Oh,
it's very much a lower budget.
We had a theater full of gremlins.
Yeah, exactly. So this was a very much more lower budget production, and it plays into what Brian and I were even talking about before we started recording, which was, is Critters 2 actually better than Critters 1? I think it probably is, and we'll get into the reasons why when we start talking about Critters 2, but I think part of it is because Critters is kind of lean on Critters, honestly, when you see it in comparison to what would come later. But it's still a great movie. Dee Wallace is fantastic in it,
I made a note that like Dee Wallace is just like a warm 80s hug, you know?
Yes,
it's like every time you see her, like especially in an 80s film, there's just something like, you're almost like, I'm going to be in good hands. You know what, this movie may not be that great, but you know what? I'm going to enjoy one element of it, and that is that Dee Wallace is in it.
Let's talk about the Leprechaun thing, because Leprechaun came after this movie, obviously, but and it has nothing to do with it plot-wise or anything. But this one, I just got such heavy Leprechaun vibes because it's set in a rural area, just like Leprechaun was. You have like the Charlie McFadden character. While he's not like the kind of the, I'm trying to say this without being offensive, but he's not like the special needs character of the town or whatever so much, but he is sort of like
he's treated as like kind of an outcast a little bit.
He's kind of like the Goober. If you ever watched Andy Griffith, he's kind of like the Goober. He's like the car mechanic, but he's kind of maybe not the highest IQ in the whole city, and he's really kind of a country bumpkin, and he kind of Scott Grimes as Brad is kind of like his only friend in town. Even though this is a much younger kid, it's just kind of like his only buddy because he is.
Well, he works for his family too, so he got to know him, right? I think. So he get, but still, it's like you could tell, like like that's funny. That was another kind of '80s theme. You notice that it was like that kind of like that like guy, the adult that maybe was a little bit like treated a bit poorly, would always find it in the as like kind of like the good nature of a child, like the eyes of a child, they would look as like, hey, this guy is kind of cool. I don't understand, because they don't have that cynical viewpoint yet, and and it's like, so that you see that their friendship is, but it's like based on true friendship, but like they because of that, that he looks at him as the person he is, not like whatever like the adults would look at him as,
Yeah, so it just reminded me of that dynamic between Mark Holton in Leprechaun. It just kind of had that same relationship dynamic. So that was another reminder. And then of course the monsters, even though these don't look anything like leprechauns, is still kind of the whole thing. This is common to all these monster movies. Like, there's something out there. Oh no, you're crazy. You've been drinking again. Kind of that kind of whole thing. Where like this one, the sheriff doesn't believe him.
Yeah, which is played perfectly by Emmett Walsh.
The sheriff, Emmett Walsh is the comic. Has some of the best lines. In this movie.
He tends to when he's in a movie and he's in a role like that. He tends to have like even as like in Raising Arizona, he has those little like spots where he's talking to Nicolas Cage like at the factory, and he's just coming up with like he always gets there's these certain lines that like only Emmett Walsh can deliver properly, and I think that
he's fantastic at this, and his lines are hilarious, and it kind of this movie is definitely a horror comedy, like that. There's no question about that, but compared to the second one, this one is definitely a little darker, I'll say.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they had quite found. I mean, it set its own tone. It was its own thing. I mean, it was what it was. And then, as we'll see when we move to Critters 2, which may be a good segue, Mick Garris's kind of great sense of humor, I think, takes over.
Yeah. And, but before we move on from Emmett Walsh, though, I do want to say I brought back an old school Civil War thing, and I came up with a candle for him.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. I want to hear this.
Okay, so I figured his candle, especially from this movie, it would be a mix of workwear, chewing tobacco, and farmtown sweat, with a hint of oil, but you'd have to pronounce it like Earl. You know how like they do
there you go.
Yeah, so with a hint of Earl, and I think that would be the perfect Emmett Walsh candle in this movie.
I think so. I think that would be perfect. So it's definitely very much a horror comedy, but I think. What Mick Garris would do with it in Critters 2, the main course, would really cement the tone for everything going forward. Now, I haven't seen 3 and 4, so I don't know how the tone fits. I think, I want to say like the last one, the Critters Attack or whatever, I think got darker. But at least for me in my mind, when I think of Critters, I think the tone is more aptly set by what Mick Garris did in Critters 2. Yeah. That's how I kind of remember it firmly in my mind. Not that Critters 1 wasn't funny. It has some great comedy to it. It's just Critters 2 just like doubles down on it.
Yeah. And Critters 2, I think, I think Mick Garris, because I guess we'll go into it shortly, but Mick Garris, I think, saw like the vision that, like the potential that the original Critters had.
Yes.
That I think he knows how to make that like zany horror comedic visuals that like works perfectly for this type of film.
And Mick Garris, co-wrote Critters 2,
right?
In addition to directing it. So 2 years later, they make Critters 2, 1988. Starred Terrence Mann comes back as one of the great things about the sequel is it brings back so many core characters.
Right.
So you got Terrence Mann coming back as the bounty hunter. You have Don Keith Opera comes back as Charlie. Cynthia Garris plays Zanti. Scott Grimes comes back as Brad. We lose Dee Wallace, but Scott Grimes, they kind of explain it by he goes and stays with his grandmother? Or his Nana?
Grandmother.
I think they call her Nana.
Yeah.
I think everybody calls her Nana, so she's somebody's grandmother.
Yeah.
You have Al Stevenson as the bus driver, Tom Hodges as Wesley, Douglas Rowe as Quigley.
By the way, Tom Hodges, isn't he like the Billy Zane you'd buy off of Wish? You know, he's like that, he's like that second tier guy in the 80s that was always like kind of like a bully or like a bad, obnoxious kid, like maybe Lucas. He was obnoxious, always. And then something else he was in like that. I don't know. I feel like he wanted to totally be sorry, I said Billy Zane. I meant William Zabka.
Yes.
Sorry, but did I say William Zabka? I can't remember now.
No, you said Billy Zane.
Oh,
I knew what you were going for.
Yeah, Billy Zabka, William Zabka, who was the ultimate 80s villain and is like one of the most awesome people on the planet, in terms of that kind of stuff. But so I just wanted to, it was funny when I saw him in there. I said, okay, he's going to be obnoxious. I know right off the bat when you see him, you knew he's going to be. But sorry, now continue.
Douglas Rowe as Quigley, Leanne Curtis as Megan, Lindsay Parker as Cindy, Herta Ware as Nana, Sam Anderson as Mr. Morgan, Lynn Shay comes back as Sal, Barry Corbin as Harv, Eddie Deason as the Hungry Heifer Manager.
Talk about an 80s guy. Yes. Eddie Deason is like all over the place.
I love the Hungry Heifer commercials too.
Yeah, do you know he's actually working on a short film a Critters spin-off short film. I don't know if it was made, but I saw it in one of his things. I think it was in his trivia or something, or his upcoming things, and it's about the hamburger place specifically. But it's like I totally think it's like a kind of a spoof he's probably doing years later, involving the hungry heifer and his character.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's crazy. Yeah, he was like the quintessential like 80s nerd, like in everything. So the synopsis here is: eggs of the small but voracious alien creatures called krites are left behind on Earth, and after hatching, set their appetites on the small farm town of Grover's Bend. Now, at the end of Critters 1, we know this because we see a shot of eggs in the barn.
Right.
Which I think there was like 3 or 4, but when you get to Critters 2, there's like 30.
Yeah. Which I mean, it could be easily explained as you only saw a portion.
A portion,
you don't know where
yeah.
these critters were all over the town. They could have easily found more and put more somewhere.
Yeah. So Critters 2, Brad comes to stay with Nana for a little while with his little earring because he's such a punk rock terrible influence.
And he takes a bus now. You know?
Yes. And before too long, we find out that the critters are hatching. Everybody thinks they're Easter eggs. This is an Easter movie, by the way.
I know. You know, it's like almost like a hidden Easter movie that nobody ever considers around that time of year to watch.
Yeah, hidden Easter egg of an Easter movie because the critters' eggs are mistaken for Easter eggs. They're sold to at one point they're sold to a collector of junk, basically. And he's trying to pawn them off. Ends up giving some of them to Nana, who thinks they're Easter eggs. So she takes them to the church, and they're going to decorate these. The kids are even painting them at one point. And of course, they hatch, and chaos ensues. And this is where this movie really, I think, the combination of this and the promotion of the first movie is where people really cemented in their minds that this was a Gremlins knockoff, because there's a lot of scenes in here that are reminiscent of Gremlins, where the critters are kind of going crazy and the hungry heifer, and they're doing gremlin-y things. They're like eating stuff and breaking things and messing stuff up, and they kind of have the same mannerisms where they laugh at everything and they're look kind of mischievous doing whatever they're doing. So I think that definitely this one felt much closer to Gremlins even than the first one.
Yeah, this definitely didn't help the people that want to criticize it or criticize it for being too close to Gremlins. But I still think these stand on their own anyway. I mean, you're gonna find comparisons to things. I mean, if it was different, if like Scott Grimes was handed this first one as a pet, I'd say okay, total knockoff. But,
okay,
you can have similarities between two movies, and they don't have to be a ripoff of the other. I mean, I'm not saying he wasn't inspired by it. He could have been, Mick Garris, but
but I love the whole storyline, because Charlie at the end of the first movie goes to be like, you can see him pestering the bounty hunters like, hey, take me with you, because he has nothing left here. He has nothing in this town. He's an outcast. And we find out that he becomes one of the bounty hunters. So
which I love that fact that he's like totally like in with them now, and he's like off in his adventure and with them.
Yeah, the movie starts off with him actually on a bounty, hunting other aliens. So he has become a full-fledged bounty hunter. So he gets to come back to Earth and kind of reunite with Brad for a brief time at least, and to hunt these critters down. And I love that storyline, that through line. I thought it was also great that one of the bounty hunters this time is Terrence Mann returns as Ugg, but the other one, Lee, ends up, he never knows quite what to shapeshift into.
Yeah, because they said he doesn't feel it, right?
He's got to feel it. So he ends up, in this one, he ends up shapeshifting into a Playboy centerfold model.
Yeah, but surprisingly PG, like, boobs in this movie. I did not, I don't remember that being a thing in there, because this is a kind of like, one of those family kind of horror movies, and like, you figure that's like the Critter series is another great gateway horror film, but this is like, there's some like, serious time on boobs in this movie. And it's funny, it's so traditional too. It's like almost like a weird sciencey thing where like the Playboy falls out of that guy's truck, and then like they find it, and that's how he decides to pick the female character. But it's funny that like they realize how like risque it could be. Like she starts to walk off without her top, and like tries to grab her to come back to wear it, and then the next scene, you see her clothed. But it's kind of funny, but it's done in like a non like non-sexual way. It's not done
yeah.
like in a provocative manner that like a child couldn't, you couldn't have it with your kids. You wouldn't have to
Yeah.
they wouldn't have too many questions per se.
I'd feel perfectly comfortable letting the kids watch either of these movies. And the shapeshifting stuff is just funny because like there's one point where Lee sees a cutout of Freddy Krueger and Charlie's got to stop him from turning into shapeshifting into Freddy Krueger, which I thought was a great little
and that's funny
thing.
because a new line and the whole thing, and that would have been an extra like little funny nod that they got that. So, but
the movie's full of those little things that like I think I kind of think of them as like Mick Garrisisms.
Yeah. Like, totally.
And I don't know that he was responsible for that particular joke, but there's so many things about this movie that kind of feel like his brand of humor. And he's such a nice guy. Like we met him at HorrorCon, as you guys know, and just a super, super like laid back, chill, very funny, but very kind sounding guy. So I mean, he's just that you can see that tone in his work. Stuff that he's done before, and this really shines in Critters 2. I was really looking forward to this one just because he directed it. Yeah, and he talked a lot about it when we were at his panel.
Yeah, that was like one of his main feature things, topics that he spoke about.
So you can definitely see his writing influence in this and his directorial influence in this, because this one really amps up. This one doubles down on everything that the first movie had. There's way more critters, way more body count. It's a lot funnier. The comedy is a lot dialed up quite a bit. So it's really everything you liked about the first movie, but just bigger and bigger and better, culminating in the giant critters ball at the end, which is fantastic. Like this giant boulder full of critters, which I love. I mean, watching this, I knew like the movie wasn't over when they tricked all the critters into going into like the hammer meat factory or whatever, and blowing it up. Like you knew it wasn't over because there was still like 20 minutes left in the movie, but I still loved the whole. Like I love the whole story. Like I love the whole thing that they put this false ending there to make you think that everything's over, and then they just come back bigger and better than ever with this giant critters ball. And then you got to figure out how they're going to stop that. So I love that whole, like the whole story thing was great to me. It seems like this one hit the ground running and kind of never let up. Whereas the first Critters, I think there was a little bit of background they had to do. They had to introduce the bounty hunters. They had to introduce the whole town coming to terms that the critters are here, and are they here, are they not? And there was a lot of build up to get to that. Whereas this one, you kind of hit the ground running. Now, the townspeople still don't believe in the critters because they think he made everything up.
Yeah, and I like that subplot that they don't want him back in there because they don't want him like spreading things. There's no more sheriff anymore. They don't even have a sheriff really because, well, they have that one, and then something happens to him, and then which I won't spoil in case you haven't seen it for some reason. But then then they have to convince Barry Corbin to come back as a sheriff, so you have his like hero moment where he comes back, and then and then they also have the his love interest in it is like working. Her father runs like the paper or something, and they're trying to like find out like a story on him. So it's kind of like a whole interesting little like little side plots are going on that would kind of make sense if this was a real storyline. It's like, okay, this kid came back, we haven't seen him in years, and the last time we saw him, he was like causing havoc in the town by saying there's aliens, and obviously they hadn't seen him in years, and so they assumed it was all made up and everything, and so I kind of like that aspect. And do you know, by the way, who played recognize Megan, the one Leanne Curtis, what she was from?
No,
she was Molly Ringwald's best friend in 16 Candles.
Oh,
I think Randy was her name in it. And the one that was like that she like called up in the beginning, and there was always so that was her in it. I was like, oh, it's so weird. It's like she had a couple of 80s movies in there. So, but she looks so different in this one. It's funny. It's like much. I mean, I think this was around the same time too. Right? 16 Candles came out in 85.
Yeah, this is 88.
Oh, 84. I'm sorry, 84. So this was 4 years later.
4 years later,
so that makes sense.
Yeah, so but man, I absolutely love this one. Like it was thoroughly entertaining from beginning to end. Like they dispensed with all the backstory, but if you knew the back, like I still say you have to watch Critters 1 though, because there's so many tie-ins that like enrich this one. Like the whole character of Charlie and how he like became something of himself as an intergalactic bounty hunter when he comes back. There's a whole thing about this movie that you appreciate more when you've seen the first one, and I thought that was great for a sequel. I thought, and especially it's so rare with these horror franchises that there's any carry through other than the main villain. It's usually, you don't usually have these returning characters, or maybe you do like sequels down the road. They bring one back for nostalgia's sake or whatever. But it's so rare that you have two, a first and a second that are so tightly integrated as these are, especially for a movie like this. This is not like a monster movie. Is so easy to just do it with a whole completely new cast of characters and not have any of that through line.
Yeah, the perfect example was what you gave before, Leprechaun, right? Because Mark Holton came back in like the last one or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean they'll do that because they want to have some tie back to the original. I understand that, but it's very rare you get two back to back that bring back so many core characters and keep their storylines consistent and everything. I just thought it was fantastic. So I really, really liked Critters 2. Again, like I'll say, I think it's better. It's a better movie than the first one. Now, you won't, if you look at the IMDb ratings, it's still ranked below the original. I think because a lot of people are going to always rank the original higher than the sequels. But for my money, in terms of pure entertainment, I thought this was the better movie. It's funnier, it's bloodier, it's more action packed, and it really better captures the tone of what I think the franchise is, or what it had the potential to be, than the first movie did.
Right, and now not that the first one was bad in any way, but I feel like Critters 2 gave you kind of like, if there's something you in the first one you said, you know what, if only had this, or if it only had this, like these little bits, like it found like Mick Garris like said, okay, you know what, I feel you too. I see what it is, what this might be better, and like what might be missing a little here, and I'm gonna add to it, and like like typical rules of a sequel: bigger, better, crazier. And he did it without making it like without sacrificing any story or anything. He still managed to get the good story in, the continuity from the first one. He still got all that in there, but still made went above and beyond to get the crazier and bigger stuff in there.
Yeah. So next week we'll be taking a look at the remaining 3 in the franchise. Now there was a Critters series, which I don't remember the whole situation around that. Was like just a web series, or was it actually?
Yeah, I'm not sure because I got vague. I don't like it's like such a faint memory to me.
Yeah, so there was we decided not to do the series piece of it because we're really focusing on films.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of like The Exorcist when we didn't do that, right?
And like Psycho, we didn't do Bates Motel.
Yeah, that's the one I meant, not Exorcist. Yeah. Psycho. Yeah, we didn't do Bates Motel because it's about the movies. It's it's not really the. If you start going to shows, I mean, forget it. We imagine the Friday the 13th one. We had to do the Friday the 13th series, even though Jason wasn't in it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you have to draw the line somewhere. So we decided to just do the movie. So we did. So coming up next week, we'll have Critters 3, which I think is sort of like Critters Take Manhattan. That's where they hit the big city.
Yeah,
gets them out of the rural area. Critters 4 takes them to space,
which
they're already in space.
Yeah, that's a weird. Like, I don't feel like that one is like cheats as much, it jumps the shark as much into space because they kind of started there.
Yeah, and then we'll round things off with Critters Attack, which was kind of the reboot of somewhat of a reboot. I'm not sure that it was labeled as a reboot per se, but that was the fairly recent one from 2019. Dee Wallace returns in that one. And again, that's the one I think has a little bit of a darker tone, but we'll see when we watch it. I don't know anything about it beyond the fact that Dee Wallace returns. So that's the 3 we have coming up. Those will be fun because I guarantee you I've never seen any or even part of any of those. But those are going to be completely brand new. And I think they're going to be. Oh, also Critters 3, spoiler alert, has Leonardo DiCaprio's first film role, I think.
I know, and we could actually like that. Like, now that meme could be like in full, like, like it's like perfect to use.
Full circle, yeah. But anyway, so join us back next week for that. I know this is a little bit on the short side, but we were a little bit pressed for time this week. I hope you guys have I'm looking forward to the July 4th vacation because I've got a 4-day weekend coming up, so I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, and you know what I'm planning to do? I wanted to do. I haven't done it. It was funny. I was talking to my sister-in-law about this, and I said I want to do this. I think I'm going to do it one of the days, maybe not on 4th of July per se, but one of the days like of that like weekend because I have the Monday off. So I have like a couple of I have a base, and I think I took the Friday before off actually. So I think I have like a 5-day weekend kind of a weekend. I want to do like an old fashioned cookout. You know, like get some good like just good old like cookout burgers. You know.
Oh,
like,
we're doing that.
And
we
like,
are totally
and
doing
hot dogs. Like nothing fancy. Nothing like no steaks. You know, I just want a good old like. You know, like mustard, sauerkraut, you know, all like beans, you know, like corn, maybe. You know, good old cookout stuff. Like
we do that every 4th of July.
Yeah.
We go full traditional, and we invite the family over, and we do burgers, and we play cornhole in the backyard. We do the whole thing. So that's happening this year as well. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think I wanted something like cool and simple because you know we did the fancy like for Father's Day we grilled swordfish because that's what I had a fancy recipe and I grilled it all up and it came out very good, by the way. I have to tell you, if you ever want to cook a swordfish, like I send you this recipe. It's really good. But besides that, before we get into Civil Gore kitchen mode,
yes, Civil Gourmet.
But yeah, oh, I like that too.
Ooh,
There's a spin-off podcast if you ever heard of. Oh, now that'll be the name of our cookbook.
That's our cookbook.
Our
yeah,
cookbook, Civil Gourmet. Yeah. I like it. Yeah, yeah, but we'll do. Yeah, but I figured, I just throw that out there because you know we'll probably have we really need to do one time. We need to do like some kind of special 4th of July. This season is not the year, just with the busyness of our schedule. But one of those things we do, and I still have an idea for a holiday thing I want to do. I'll talk to you off air about this. Figure we need to get this going because I have it even bigger and grander than I originally had this idea. But we got plenty of stuff coming up. So
yeah. All right, guys. Well, take care, and we will see you back here next week for more critters.
The kites.